Wondering what the F has happened to your body and your life? You're in the right place, my friend. Welcome to Season 3 of Transforming 45, where we dive into the incredible stories of how brilliant humans are navigating the midlife squeeze with courage, passion, and a healthy dose of humor. Don't miss out on any of our heart-led episodes. Hit the subscribe button, leave a 5-star review, and if you're inspired, share an episode you love with a friend. It means more to me than I can express that you're choosing to spend time here and sharing our message of midlife revolution. So let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Transforming 45. This week, I am really excited to welcome Todd Payne to the show. We are going to be having a conversation about, as always, all things midlife transformation, but with a focus on the Enneagram. And it's something that has been a bit of a puzzle to me for a while. So this conversation is going to be really, really interesting. Todd, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Todd is a seasoned relationship coach with over 25 years of experience, specializing in self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and the Enneagram. His unconventional journey from ministry to coaching has given him unique insights into human behavior, which he uses to help individuals and couples achieve lasting transformation. After a life-changing sabbatical and devastating wildfire, Todd relocated to Portugal, where he now thrives as an emotional intelligence coach. And today he continues to guide clients toward profound personal and relational growth, drawing on his extensive experience and deep commitment to helping others. Todd, so glad you're here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really a joy to be here with you and be a part of the good work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so let's start at the beginning with your story. So Todd, who are you and how did life introduce you to this version?
I love the way that you've asked this question, how did life introduce me to this version? Because I think if at any point in the past you'd asked me what version I would be at this age, this isn't the version I would have chosen for myself, right? It's sort of revealed to us over time. My story starts when I was not raised in any sort of a religious tradition, but I did date a girl in college who was. And she said, I'm going to go to church. And you know how you are as a young man. You want to go wherever the girl that you like is going. So I went to church too. That led to a religious experience, which ultimately took me into the seminary where I trained to be a minister. But I start there because when I told my parents that I wanted to be a minister, my father said, you can't be a minister. You're terrible with people. And then part of the training for ministry is a year-long internship. At the end of that internship, my supervisor wrote a summary of me that said, Todd has none of the gifts and skills essential for ministry. All of this is to say, I was not really good with people. And I was so bad with people, I didn't even know I was bad with people. Through a series of events, I did end up becoming ordained and serving as a minister, but that first decade or more was really quite challenging as I beat my head against the wall to understand how people work, how to help them work together, how to interact with them. And, I did learn. But then about 15 years into my ministry, I received a sabbatical. And in my tradition, the bishop says, this isn't just a chance to sleep in on Sunday. What are you going to do to improve yourself? And he suggested that I study the Enneagram. So he introduced me to a coach. He gave me some materials. And really, the Enneagram provided me with a system and a framework and some traction to put all these lessons I had learned over the years about people into a way to understand it and really use it. So I came back from that and I started using it with my staff, with my volunteers, with my congregation, and discovered this powerful tool that was not only profoundly energizing for personal transformation, but really gave us tools to improve the way that we work with one another. And so, after 20 years of nights and weekends, I was kind of done with ministry, and I decided that I would leave and start my own business to help use the Enneagram for people, for individuals, and for couples to understand themselves and one another better and improve their relationships and their interactions. I'll just add as a to how I got to where I am now. A few years after I left, I lost my home in a wildfire in Colorado in late 2021, prompted us as a family to ask the question, are we going to go back or are we going to go forward? And if we're going to go forward, what does that look like? And, through a process, we landed on Portugal, and that's how we're here. So that attitude, though, is one that I try to bring to my work, try to impart to my clients about there's always a way to move forward and discover things that there's no such thing as hopeless. So that's sort of my story in a nutshell of how I ended up to be where I am, and how I use the Enneagram in the ways that I do.
Well, it's a fascinating story, and there are so many elements of it that I want to talk about. We could end up talking for a very long time, so I'm trying to focus. And as we are recording, it is early in 2025, and wildfires have been a real story in our world so far this year. And so I think this conversation can be really helpful for people who are maybe feeling hopeless because we have mass levels of devastation that we haven't seen perhaps in a very, very long time. And that question of how do I want to go forward? And whether you have lost your home in a wildfire or you have lost someone you loved or there's just some major shift in your foundation, right? That's kind of how I frame this midlife upheaval
Hmm.
that happens because there's so much shifting and changing in our lives that
Hmm.
there's the upheaval that's happening in our foundation. And so what was it that really you leaned into around how to move forward in a way that was actually about how you really wanted to live and not the expectations of how you were supposed to live?
Oh my gosh, that's a fantastic question. I wish I could pinpoint a single moment or attitude that did that. I think in part it was a long process to become a person who could see things that way. I think I spoke of banging my head against a wall, or tumbling around on the rock tumbler, I sometimes call it, in those first years of ministry as I figured out what it meant. And one of the lessons that we learned was that you can't always see how it's going to turn out, but it is going to turn out. I didn't mention in my story, though, that's pertinent in this moment, the woman who would become my wife and I took a year off of seminary. She was also a minister for a time, and lived in our car and traveled around the country because our brains were full from going kindergarten to graduate school without stopping. We're like, we need a break. That was a really influential time in both of our lives to understand that you can, hit the open road, and people are kinder than you think they are. And the universe provides when you have a need. And it's really about keeping your eyes open to see what's there, to be receptive. And when we are in a place of fear, when we are in a place of anger, it can be very hard to be receptive. And that's really, I think, when hopelessness can smother.
Absolutely. I think the way you framed that about being receptive is a really important stance to get to be able to move into
Hmm.
because we get so attached to, and the way you also said, like, it will turn out. You didn't put a qualifier on either side of that though, right? It just was, it will turn out.
It will.
Something will happen. And I think we get so attached to trying to control
Hmm.
how it's going to turn out
Hmm.
that we lose the receptivity of being able to sit in that space of it's going to turn out.
Yeah, as you mentioned, that occurs to me. There's a principle I call the problem of finding your keys, and it goes like this: why is what you're looking for always in the last place that you look for it? Because you stop looking once you've found it. Well, that works for things like keys, but it doesn't work for things like relationships or difficult situations or foundational shifts. Because when you stop looking once you found the first solution, you really put horse blinders on as to all the dozens and hundreds of other possible outcomes that might take shape, and many of them better than things you could even conceive of yourself. So this problem of finding this is an outcome, it will work for me, and then clinging to it and saying, I'm now done looking for other ways this could turn out, is really, it's a problem many of us face.
Mhm. Absolutely. Personally, I can speak to it. I mean, people who listen to the show know that I just went through a huge life transformation from my career to my kids leaving home, going off to university. My father passed away. We moved
Mm,
homes. My partner changed jobs. Like literally everything
wow.
happened. All we moved. We sold multiple properties, moved cities, and
Wow, everything.
literally everything. Every midlife transformation you can have, we did it in the span of 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's been intense. And the lesson that I learned from it was exactly what you were just talking about. that because there was so much happening at the same time, my go-to would be to try to control everything. But
Mhm.
because there was so much happening, I couldn't
Right.
and had to put myself into that space of receptivity of, well, something's going to happen. And learning that lesson, it was a very intense way to learn it.
Yeah.
And in the space that I'm in now, it's essential. It's like the essential learning that I needed to have to be able to be in that space of like, well, I just went through all of that. So now let's just watch and see what happens. And there is this really beautiful life that is unfolding
Oh, that's great.
within and around us. And that's not to say that there won't be upheaval and disruption. There
There will
always
be,
is.
I promise.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have that piece of learning now of knowing that it will turn out.
That's just my heart is light to hear you say that this is a piece of wisdom that you'll carry with you because, once we learn a thing, we hope that we don't unlearn it. I think this points to the Enneagram in an interesting way because people often say, Enneagram teachers will say that Enneagram isn't of great use to you until you're sort of in midlife. When you are finally done doing things in one way only, then you're ready to hear about how things can be done in different ways. And that's really the moment where I believe this, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And sounds like the chaos gave you a gift. If everything shifted underneath you at once, there was a gift that came from that. And that
Yes.
was the understanding that things will turn out in ways that you can't expect. I have also learned in internalizing this lesson that they often turn out in ways that are better than anything I could have imagined. If I think
Mhm.
of the best way it could turn out, sometimes it's wildly different and even better. And I'm almost glad that I don't limit to my own things I can think of, my own imagination, because it's sort of insufficient in some ways, that the universe is even more abundant.
Yes, absolutely. When we can get to that place of receptivity, of welcoming what the universe has for us. And I've said this often, but if you had said to me this time last year
Mm.
what my life is today, I would have been like, what are you even talking about? Because everything I had assumed, and we do that a lot, right? Like we have this societal structure for a
Right,
narrative of how a life is supposed to go.
right,
So I still was very much in that story. And so I was trying to imagine within that framework what was possible.
right.
But it's when we step outside of that framework, then what actually is possible is able to be received.
Yes. And I find that a lot of folks, I don't know if it's, that old adage, it's better to give than receive, but receiving is difficult for people. Receiving the kindness of strangers, being the receiver of charity, as we had to do after the wildfire. Just any sort of reception is in some ways viewed as a weakness. Like, I shouldn't need this. I should be able to do it on my own. I'm not going to take something from someone else. And that kind of puts us at a deficit for this being open and attuned to what's being on offer if we're just sort of no, no, no. And I think that's a struggle a lot of folks face.
Yes, I absolutely agree, and I think it really comes into play in midlife as well,
Hmm.
because there's this idea that we're supposed at this point, you're
Yes,
supposed to have it all together, we are supposed
yes.
to have all the things, we're supposed to have all the answers, and we're supposed to be giving that back. Meanwhile, the reality is, I don't know
I'm
anything.
still making it up as I go, as I was
Absolutely.
10 years ago, as I was 20 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's some freedom in coming to that realization, which I think is part of like the gift of midlife.
I think so too.
Yeah, of getting to that space of being like, well, the truth is nobody knows what they're doing.
And the truth is, it has turned out so far. Like,
Yeah.
here I am, and the sun's still coming up, and I have many good things in my life. Certainly, not everything is as I would have it be, but when I look around and go, I don't know how I got here, but here I am. So I could say the same thing about tomorrow. I don't know exactly how I'm going to get there, but I know I'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. All right.
All
So
right, we've
let's
strayed a little far afield.
never. It is all connected. So let's really get into the Enneagram. So
Okay.
what is it?
Yeah.
And then what are the different types?
Sure, this is a great question. So the Enneagram is really inherited wisdom. It's been around for 2,500 years or more. It's really made its way into the West and into Western psychology in the last 50 years or so. But it's a way of understanding how human beings work. It's a framework for thinking about people and the way that, and about ourselves. The way that it works foundationally is that it says all human beings have three different kinds of intelligence that are essential for survival. The first kind of intelligence is that which you would think of as intelligence, and we call that the head center. And the head center is really a highly developed threat detection system. That's what it has done over these millions of years, is it looks at the patterns of the past and tries to predict the future so that we can have the resources we need, we can be safe. We hear a branch break and we think, is that a predator? Is that the wind? And we go, all the other times it's been the wind, so I probably don't need to worry. So pattern recognition, anticipation and response, strategizing. This is what the head center does. But it takes 25 years to come online. Avis won't rent you a car until you're 25 because the brain isn't fully developed at doing this risk assessment trick that I've just described. So we are born with this other kind of intelligence that is the heart center intelligence, and it's about connection, and it's about relationship, and it's about identity. Who are my people? Who am I among my people? The mother, the caregiver. And that is an essential intelligence as well. But, anybody who's walked on the earth for a couple of days is probably aware that sometimes what the head center wants and what the heart center wants aren't the same thing. And so we can really experience internal conflict in that way. We also have a third intelligence center, which we call the body center or the gut center. And it is about getting our needs met. And whereas the head is looking forward into the future, what's going to happen, the heart is looking into the past and saying, what did I say? What should I have said? What do people think of me because of what happened in the past? The body center is fully in the present, right? I'm not hungry yesterday. I don't have to pee tomorrow. I'm right here in this moment. And so the body center is about the environment that we live in and how the world is ordered and how things should be. And so every human being has all three of these intelligence centers, but not in equal measure. Because of our genetics, because of the way we're brought up, we lean into one or the other. I happen to be a head center type. I'm type 5. My wife is a heart center type. She's type 2. And one of the things the Enneagram really did for us that was so powerful was teach us how to hear, to listen to the other person's way of speaking. Like I listen for feeling words and she listens for reasoning words. And when I want to talk to her, I want to say, okay, let me translate into her language in a way so she'll understand what I'm saying. So it really gave us some tools. But more than that, it gave us insight into, we all graduate childhood with this kind of belief that other people think the way we think and want what we want and value what we value. But then we discover that her way, my wife's way of being in the world is logical and coherent and has integrity. It's just different from mine. She notices different things. She values different things. And that gave us a space of empathy, a space to connect and communicate it. And it wasn't about what you do, I don't like. It was about, oh, this is interesting about twos. That's what she is. She said, oh yeah, fives and twos, they interact in these ways. It gives us sort of this neutral ground to do some work on and find some common language and connection.
That's really interesting. And as you're talking, obviously I'm thinking about all of my own relationships
Yeah.
and just being a little like, oh yeah. And my husband and I always talk about this a lot. And I will say, of course, no relationship is perfect. And we are very good communicators. Part of it was we'd had a long distance relationship for
Mhm.
the first 3 years
Oh, wow.
of our relationship because I went to school in one city, he was at university in another. So it was 3 years of long distance, which meant all we could do was talk
Right.
for most of that time. And so we really learned how to listen to each other
Hmm.
and able to stay connected over 3 years of long distance. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and we are very different types. And maybe it was through that, like, learning that communication that we were able to appreciate that about each other
Hmm.
and what we bring to the relationship and how it shapes the way we communicate with each other.
Yes.
So, what are some of the trends? Well, first, actually, let's go through. So, what are the different types? So, you mentioned a type
Yeah.
2 and a type 5.
Yeah. Good
I
question.
did the test again this morning
Okay.
because I've done it and not really resonated. And I can't remember what my other ones came out as, but this morning I did it and I came out as a type 3 as an
Mm.
achiever.
Hmm. Hmm. So a quick word about tests, and then let's take a run around the wheel.
Yes.
So I find that when you take a test and you receive a profile report, it's easy to look at it and say, well, this part sounds like me and this part doesn't sound like me. And so it sort of becomes about the accuracy of the profile or even the accuracy of the test. And in that way, I usually invite folks to learn about the system, to hear about the 9 types, and to discover which one is theirs. Because when you claim your type rather than being told your type, it's sort of an act of confession. You're sort of like, okay, this is me. This is my shadow side. This is my self-talk. And so even if there are parts of it that you don't make, parts of the profile of that type that don't make sense to you or that you don't agree with, there's a part of you that's like, well, maybe it's true. Let me experiment with this because maybe there's wisdom in the Enneagram about myself. I don't even know this about myself. So I'm not a huge fan of tests in that way. But with that said, here's a quick spin around the wheel, which is a better introduction, I think. So the thing that makes the Enneagram different than, say, Myers-Briggs or DISC or Big Five is that it's not about the external behaviors. Two people may do the same external thing, but for very different internal reasons. And the Enneagram gets at motivations, hopes, fears, what I like to call our self-talk, our internal narrative, because we all have one running all day long. What should I do? How, am I a good person? Am I a bad person? And there really are 9 kinds of self-talk that the Enneagram identifies. And we refrain from giving names to the types because in the world of the Enneagram, all personality characteristics are value neutral. It might be a great thing that you're an achiever if that's your type 3, but you might also hear that and not like it. Type 1 is sometimes called perfectionist. Who wants to be called a perfectionist? Type 1s are amazing and wonderful people who can get amazing things done. So let's not label. Let's use the numbers. With that said, the self-talk of 1 is, I can be better. You can be better. The world can be a better place. We should all be working as hard as we can to make the world a better place. And if you're not, then what's wrong with you or what's wrong with me or this notion of standards and excellence and striving. That's really what characterizes 1s. And hopefully you can see in that there's some great value and there are some pitfalls and obstacles. The self-talk of type 2 is people need me. I need to be there for them. The world is a place that has a lot of needs and I'm the person who can step in and meet those needs. And whatever it is that needs to be done, I'm there for you. They're supportive, they're nurturing, they are loving, they are helpful, but they also neglect themselves. They subjugate their own needs to the needs of others in ways that are ultimately quite harmful to them. So that's sort of how 2s shake up. 3s, they really see the world as, let me back up for just a moment. Type 2s, 3, and 4 are heart center types. And what the heart center wants is to be loved. So 2s say, if I'm a helpful person, then people will love me for being helpful. 3s say, if I'm an impressive person, people will love me because they'll admire me. If I look good, if I've got numbers in my bank account or letters after my name or whatever the standard is. In my family, it's join the Navy. And if I join the Navy and I rise through the ranks, then I want to be an achiever because then when people see me, they will look at me, they will admire me, they will love me. Type 4 is also a heart type. They want to be loved. Their self-talk is more, why aren't I loved? What's wrong with me? Other people seem to find love. Why can't I find love? Or this woman, this man, they seem to like me, but they must not know the real me. If they really got to know the real me, then they wouldn't like me. And so I've got to pretend to be the person that they want to be. So there's this kind of internal struggle that 4s have, and it often results in them wanting to feel special or unique. That sums up our heart center types 2, 3, and 4. I started with 1. We'll return to the body center. I'll say more about that. Now we move into the head center types, type 5, 6, and 7. 5s, 6s, and 7s all want to, because of the head center, they want to feel certain about the future. The future is the concern, not other people so much. That was part of why I needed to learn as much as I needed to learn, because I was just seeing the world as data and consequences, cause and effect, and I didn't see people. That was really what I had to learn. But what most 5s see is if I understand how things work, then I will be safe navigating them. My brother, who is a type 7, I'll talk about that in a minute, but he invited me on a whitewater rafting trip once. And I said, well, let me read a book about it. Let me take a course, right? Let me learn as much as I can about it because that'll keep me safe. And he's like, you know what? You get in the water in the raft, you put the helmet on and you go. That's how you figure it out. And 7s are that way. They learn with the body. 5s learn with the head. 7s are still head center people. They want to learn, they want to explore, they want to discover, but they do it with the body. And one problem for 7s, since I'm on them, is they often struggle to feel satisfied. Each adventure is exciting in its own, but I want the next one, and maybe the next one will be more satisfying. The next spouse, the next job, the next hobby. So 7s are the life of the party. They're a lot of fun to be with. but they often struggle to feel satisfied. So I skipped six, but forgive me. Sixes are in the head center too. They are worrisome people. They think about the future a lot in ways like how things could go wrong. I like to joke, I don't want to carry the suitcase of a six because they'll have shorts and long sleeves. They'll have a swimsuit and an umbrella. They'll have backups of every kind of medicine. Like it's a heavy suitcase because they prepare for all the possible outcomes. And sixes really are, they're busybodies. They're great team players. They're great people, but they're really often worrisome or anxious people. We're almost there to the end. You're doing great. Thanks for letting me prattle on about this.
Oh, it's really interesting.
Right, so now we're to the body center. And as you recall, the body center is about the world being orderly. It's about the world being the way that it should be. And that's really a gut feeling. It's tough to put into words. It's not a head center thing. It's not about logic and that sort of order. It's like, that's not right. People shouldn't be treated that way. It's like order and justice really drives. And for eights and nines and ones in this body center, control and autonomy are sort of the signs, right? Remember, two, three, and four, they want to feel loved. Five, six, and seven, they want to feel safe. Eight, nine, and one, they want to feel like they have an impact on the world around them, like they have some control, they have some autonomy. Eights do that by just being powerhouses. Eights are bulls in china shops. They're strong. They bulldoze over people. They powerfully affect change. In fact, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was most likely an eight. So while they can be quite difficult and gruff and they struggle in relationships because to be powerful is to view vulnerability as a weakness. I have no weaknesses. I'm not vulnerable. There's no way you can get me. So it makes it tough to be in a relationship because relationships are built on vulnerability,
Yeah.
but they do change the world, sometimes for the worse, sometimes for the better, depending on their levels of health and awareness. And then that brings us lastly to type nine. And type nine is about bringing about orderliness in their world. So they are mediators. They are reconcilers. They are uniters. They go about sort of blending and balancing. And the wonderful thing is that, as I said, they unite us and they bring us together and they see all sides of a story. But when you can see all sides of a story, sometimes it can be tough to make a decision or take action. If I go in this direction, those people be happy, but these people be angry. If I go in that direction, these people be happy and those people be angry. And so nines are often afflicted by inertia or procrastination. And so that can be one of the struggles that nines face. And then ones, of course, as you might remember they also are trying to control the world around them and try to make things better and do things the right way. So that's that body center thing. So the best thing really, if you're new to the Enneagram, to be asking is, what is the sort of question that underlies, what is the feeling that's closest to the surface for me? For the heart center people, the question is, do people like me? Do people like, my wife asks if the checkout lady likes her, the woman sitting next to her on the bus likes her. Like it's an ever-present question for her. And for those people, shame is the feeling that is easiest to access.
Mhm.
5, 6, and 7, they're always asking a question about the future. What's going to happen? Is it going to be all right? Things going to turn out all right? And so fear is the easiest feeling to access. And for 8, 9, and 1, they're always asking the question, do I have any control or power or impact in the situation? And anger is the easiest feeling for them to access. When our needs are unmet, when our boundaries are violated, when the world isn't the way it should be, anger is what we feel. So if you're just new to the Enneagram and you're trying to figure your type out, start with those head, heart, and body. And even that, you'll begin to see the people in your life. You'll begin to see your own patterns in ways you go, I think this is really driving me. Because when you use the wrong center at the wrong time, that's when we get in trouble. My wife came home to me one day and she said, I had a terrible day at work. My boss yelled at me. And what I should have said was, do you need a hug? You want to talk about it? Can I pour you a glass of wine? But what I did say was, well, did we write a report and fill it out and give it to HR? Right? It was such a head-centered response when really it was a heart-centered moment. And so we can all access all of these intelligences when we use them in the right ways, in the right times, in the right places. Then so many of the struggles that we face begin to make more sense and we can resolve them.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And you can see, like, I'm thinking through instances where that's happened in my life where I know someone is responding to me in the way they see the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And inevitably, that's where conflict ends up happening, right?
Yeah.
Because these two understandings of the world or even experiences, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the way we experience the
Yeah.
world. So those experiences are clashing with each other. So, what is both? So, let's start with the personal.
Okay.
So, if I am now aware of my type and my how I am experiencing the world,
Mm-hmm.
how does that help me either because I was listening to Susan Stabile talk about it at one point,
Yeah.
and she said often knowing your type gives you sort of clues of where you need to do some work or where there's some healing that needs to happen.
Mhm.
So let's start there. How does knowing your type frame that for you?
Well, my wife would laugh very hard at the answer I'm about to give because as a type 5, I love to systemize and codify information. Like that's the way that my brain works. So I'm going to give you a systematic answer to a very feeling question. And I hope you'll be all right with that. But um, I actually talk about the Enneagram as the car that we're going to ride down the road in, but the road that we're going to ride down is emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence has 4 pillars. The first pillar is self awareness. And that's really what we've been talking about in large part when we discover our type. We are bound to repeat our patterns if we are unaware that there are other options. And just knowing our type sometimes is enough for us to go, I guess I could do this a different way. And instead of operating on autopilot, which I think we do for so much of our life, I'm sure you've heard this sentiment that we spend the first half of our lives constructing a life. And then at that midway point, we begin deconstructing it. And that's the sort of work that the Enneagram can give some framework for, the self awareness. The second pillar of emotional intelligence is self management. Now that I know these things about myself, what do I do with them? And the Enneagram has really baked into it this idea of counterbalance. So, for example, as a 3, a lot of the decisions you make are based on how you think the people those decisions affect will think of you.
Uh-huh.
Which is to say, maybe you're not using logic and reason. Maybe it's a financial decision. And it's like, okay, they might not like the choice I'm going to make, but I have to make the sound decision. Knowing that I tend to make the decision that other people want can give you the option of saying, well, am I doing that? Or are we all just in agreement about what the best thing to do is? Can happen too. So it gives you pause and the chance to begin knowing what self-management will look like. And truly, the path of growth is clearly outlined in the Enneagram teachings. If you're a 3, we can read the chapter on 3s and be like, this is the stuff we need to do. In a nut. Oh, by the way, and I say that a lot in a nutshell. The way to think of it is this: we all have a bowl of porridge that's too hot. We all have a bowl of porridge that's too cold. We all have a bowl of porridge that's just right. And the objective of Enneagram work, regardless of your type, is to bring all 3 bowls of porridge to be the same temperature. So
Okay.
you got to bring something down because it's way too much. Heart center for 3. Right? Bring something up because you're not using it enough. The 2 other components of emotional intelligence are other awareness, empathy, idea that people can want different things than I want, or value, or perceive, or experience differently than I do. The Enneagram gives us tools there. And then the last one, self-awareness, self-management, other awareness. I wish it was other management, but lo and behold, we can't manage other people. So what the 4th quadrant is it's interaction management. I might not be able to manage you as a person, but I could certainly bring a lot to the table in terms of the ways that we interact. So the Enneagram gives us tools there. Like I said before, now I know how to talk to my wife in new ways. So the concrete answer to your question about how does the Enneagram do that, for me, I break it into those, and then we learn them and we apply them. We learn about your type, we learn about your partner's type, and we say, okay, now that we have this information, how do we apply it in these 4 essential categories?
Yeah, that's really helpful. While you were talking about that, I was like, okay, I see. So I think part of my resistance to Enneagram had been it was putting up a mirror that I didn't particularly want to look into.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't like to frame myself as an achiever, and yet as I was going through, I was like, "Oh, yeah, that is true." Like if I can put myself into the vulnerable position of really looking and saying, "Oh yeah, that is the truth." I
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely do make decisions based on what I think other people will think of me.
Yep.
And so a tool that seems really helpful for me in knowing that is being able to ask myself those 2 questions. Am I doing this because it's what I want? Or
Mm-hmm.
am I doing this because of the perception I think other people will have of me? Even
Yes.
just being able to sort of like stop, pause, ask myself those questions will be really helpful moving forward.
Really helpful moving forward. I like to say awareness is the first step on the road to transformation, but often it's the only step. Like
Yeah.
sometimes that's all you have to do is like, oh, that's what I was doing. No wonder.
Yes.
There's a joke about a woman and her daughter who are baking an Easter ham, and they always cut the back quarter of the ham off before they put it in the bake it in the and the daughter says, "Why do we do that?" And the mom says, "I don't know. That's the way Grandma always did it. Let's call Grandma and ask her." And they said, "Why do we cut the back of the ham off?" She said, "Well, I had a really small pan." So, sometimes you want to stop and ask the question: Is this am I doing this for a reason? And threes struggle to know their own desires.
Mhm.
You've gotten so good over the years at you have this emotional antenna. These heart-centered people have this emotional, they pick up what other people want, what other people are feeling in an unconscious way even. And it
Mhm.
influences you so powerfully that if I were to say, you though, you Lisa, what do you really want? You might be like, I don't even really know. That
Yeah,
does happen.
absolutely. It's what started my new journey this
Mhm.
way. It was
Really?
yeah, yeah, I was it was a sort of tail end of COVID times, as for many people, where we were doing some deep reflecting, and my kids were at their late teen years. And I was sitting with a cup of tea and realizing I had achieved sort of everything I had imagined for my life, and was in this space of, well, then what's next? And
Yep.
what do I really want? And who am I? And I had no idea.
Yep.
I had never even stopped to consider, like, what, even at the most base level, like, what do I even like?
Yep.
What do I like? What do I want to do? Who, like, I had no clue.
I have an exercise I like to give. I think the body center roots us in these ways, and we can get so out of touch with our bodies. And so I invite people back into body awareness. And the exercise I use is called a smell library, and it works like this: smell everything you can. Smell roses, smell coffee, smell fresh muffins, but smell gym shoes and compost bins too. But as you're doing these things, check in with your sensations. Do your shoulders drop? Does a smile come to your face? Does your nose crinkle? Does your stomach churn? Like, begin, what does I like this, I don't like this feel like in your body? Because we are often, otherwise we're sort of trying to cogitate on, what do I like? Let me solve this as a problem. But it's not about that. It's about who we are in our physical selves.
Yeah. I can't remember who said it, but it was a really powerful quotation of, like, I can't think my way out of feeling problems.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
And I think that strategy is really helpful, giving people something that they can actually, because the question I get a lot is like, well, Lisa, how do I reconnect with my body? And
Mhm.
I have a strategy that uses music, right? But sensory based in the same way,
Yep.
right? Like,
Yep.
what is, and I just do the same thing through music. So, what is a song when you hear it, it immediately brings tears to your eyes, or makes you want to
Hmm.
dance, or makes you want to cry, or you absolutely don't want to listen to it,
Hmm.
right? And so where is that, where are you feeling that in your body? So it's those really sensory things that we often overlook as not being important because we're so conditioned to be in
Yes.
our heads and
Right.
thinkers. Yeah.
And the other thing this does is it begins to introduce the concept that negative physical sensations, negative emotions are valuable too. We've evolved them for a reason. Anger exists for a reason. Now, I don't want to indulge it. I don't want to make decisions while I'm angry. But when I feel that, it's telling me something about a need I have or about something that's going on. But these exercises, the music, the smell, it says, disgust, information, right?
Yes.
I don't like that
Absolutely.
thing. What a wonderful thing to know.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, I should never experience disgust. No, it's a helpful tool in the array of being a human being and finding out what's good and what's bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Often at midlife, those things are starting to shift.
Yeah,
Right? And so that can be what causes some of the tension in our relationships.
for sure.
Because at this stage, like, we know data shows us that marriages often start to fall apart, partnerships often start to fall apart in and around this time. So, how does this framework
Hmm.
help us to interact with our partners or the people that we love in our lives so that if staying together is what we want, we have something, a tool that can really help us with that?
There are a number of avenues into that question, but I think the one that I would love to lift up is that usually through the years, when we've been with a partner for a long stretch, whether it's children or career or whatever, we begin to develop a sort of a shorthand and a set of assumptions. And truth be told, these are really valuable tools. You got kids you're trying to raise, you've got a shorthand who's handling what and how it's going to get done. So it's not a bad thing in and of itself. But we also grow. Always, as human beings, we're always growing. And so when we have this shorthand and these assumptions and we don't really know how our partner has grown, then these shorthand and these assumptions get us into a lot of trouble. And one of the things the Enneagram does is it sort of brings us back to who is your partner? You fell in love with them for a reason. What aspects, as we talk about all the wonderful things and all the struggles that threes face, what are the ones that you resonate with from when you guys were first together that you're like, I love that about her. This is the thing that's so great about her. My sister-in-law, I kid you not, pulled my wife aside just before we were married and said, make a list of all the things you love about your husband. In 10 years, it's going to be the list of things you hate about him. And and when we get back into the Enneagram, where there's a space of understanding why my wife is the way she is, when there's a space of empathy, now I see that her reactions are not unhinged. They make total sense in her world. Now, we don't see things the same way, but that's okay because I now understand where she's coming from. Then we see our partner kind of in ways that we saw them in the beginning. And there's a really a spark. I see this with a lot of my clients where there's a sort of a moment where they're like, yeah, I really do like you. It's just been so long since we've done the dance that we've forgotten this, the steps and what it is we love about each other.
That's a really beautiful metaphor, right? Is that absolutely going back to the beginning and remembering, right? Oh, yeah. These are things that I absolutely loved about this person. And I talk about this a lot, right? Like as we get into life, especially if we, career, all of the logistical elements of life.
Mhm.
Often conversation between partners becomes transactional, right? Because everything is about the logistics of what's happening in the world
Yep.
around
We're
us.
business partners.
Yes. Yeah, in many ways. But that is only one element of our relationship. But when we're lost and stuck in that, then we lose all those
Yes.
aspects of
Yes.
the broader relationship. And it's like a muscle. When we don't exercise that muscle, it can atrophy. So having a tool to come back to, I can see it would be really, really helpful.
100%. And I also try to impart this idea that time spent together. I like to say there are really two key ingredients to healthy relationships: mutual vulnerability and time spent together. But mutual vulnerability is tough if you don't have the time spent together. So that's really the place to start. And if you only see your spouse for 30 minutes in a week, guess what you're going to spend that 30 minutes doing? It's going to be business. If if you see your partner for 3 hours in a week, and there's 30 minutes worth of business to do, it's going to feel so much less. It's not going to feel like all we do is, and that all that extra shared time. So I tell people, go have a meal, because it's tough to sustain an intense conversation for an entire meal. Order appetizer, order dessert. You're there for an hour. Here in Portugal, you're here for 2 hours if you do that. But the conversation will change. You will cover other things. And it's really important to just have time spent together, not doing business. It's not wasted time. Even if it feels like you're not getting anything done, you are. What you're getting done is connecting with your partner
Yeah, absolutely. And investing in that early in your relationship.
early.
Yeah. So that muscle doesn't atrophy, because the time comes where all of a sudden, if you are navigating the empty nest and your children have left and maybe there's different levels of intensity in your life, suddenly you have this person who, like you said, if you've only spent 30 minutes a week discussing business, lots of people have said to me, like, I don't even know who my
No,
partner
Mike.
is
Yeah. Yeah.
anymore.
Yep.
So making sure that you invest in that early in your relationship and coming back to it over and over and over again.
I wish I could give my course to the couples that I meet 10 years before I meet them, because then I wouldn't need them, but I'd put myself out of work, I guess. And that boat has sailed, though. When we're already 10 years in and we don't know our partner, I find that activities where we are facing one another are much more difficult. In that setting, dinner can be quite hard. By the time you get to dessert, you're both just pushing it around the plate with your fork. You got nothing left to say. In that way, I invite couples into activities that are both people are facing the same direction, whether it's a walk or drive in the country or bowling or whatever. When you're both facing in the same direction, it's so much easier. Maybe you turn, you have your but you can spend that time together in a way that is a lot less tense.
Yeah, that's a really great, really actionable tip for people, right? Just start by going on a walk. Start by maybe going to a movie.
Even yeah, even
Even
going to
just
a movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
like being in the same space together.
Yep.
Yeah, can
And then
be
talk about it. And then you've got this new thing to talk about, this experience you've shared.
yes, absolutely. Todd, this has been fascinating and really helpful. I think there's a
Good.
lot of really good, like actionable pieces that listeners can take from this episode to start, making some little shifts right away. So thank you so much for being here, for sharing your
Absolutely.
wisdom with us. I so appreciate your wisdom.
I'm so glad to be here. It's been a real joy. I loved our conversation too, and I hope we'll have another sometime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Hey everyone. Thanks for joining me on this week's episode of Transforming 45. I hope you feel inspired, empowered, and ready to embrace every facet of your midlife journey. If you enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. These actions make a world of difference in growing our podcast community. Your support helps us reach much more amazing listeners just like you. And don't forget, please share an episode you love with a friend or with your community. Sharing our stories is what helps our community grow. Keep shining your midlife magic, and I'll catch you next week. Electricast.